First, we're going to have a session with Newcastle University. Then we're going to talk to Geert Kloppenburg. And then we'll have a session here. You can go like this and get up there. I'll help you. So. Welcome. Please take a seat and don't be shy to sit at the front because we want to be as close together as possible. It's allowed again after COVID, so use it. We're at the closing session of today. I saw a lot of smiling faces, so I hope everyone had a good time and had the experience of exchanging knowledge and new ideas, or perhaps old ideas, and re-meeting new people, old people, or whoever. Anyways, thank you for joining us again here in Pakhuis for the closing session. My name is still Servas. I will still your moderator for today. And let's start. Because we start with a short trip to Newcastle via Zoom. I'm going to speak with Pete Sykes, and he's a research fellow from the University of Newcastle. And he did a text analysis of the different research projects connected to the eHUBS project. Pete, thank you for joining us, and can you hear me?
Yes, I can, yes, thanks for inviting me.
A warm Amsterdam welcome. Unfortunately, you're not here with us, but this is almost as good. You're going to take us along with your, well, in this closing session of this closing seminar for the eHUBS project, you're going to take us along in your research and how you looked at all the results from all the universities in your text analysis. So please go ahead.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'll just query your use of tense there for did the research, doing the research. This is quite a late starting project. But yeah, right, so we're going to say, we're going to put the slides up. Well, first of all, everybody, thanks for inviting me. I'm Pete Sykes. I've got a long history of transport assessment software, production of modelling and simulation tools. But my current research is focused on how we use the results of those modelling and assessment tools and how that results in a project actually coming to fruition. So if you move on to the first slide. Right, okay. When we're modelling transport projects, there's what we measure, what we say, and what we do. And a couple of examples. There's a study about 2012, about 10 years ago in Scandinavia. It was Oslo University did it. They developed an efficiency index. Right? So if in that green section, you start with your projects that you've assessed and take them from the highest BCR downwards until you've spent your budget, that will be an efficiency index, a financial efficiency index of +1. If, on the other hand, you started at the bottom with your worst assessed projects and spent all the way up until you'd spent your budget, then you have an efficiency index of -1. In Finnish Eurovision style, Norway scored 0. Right? And in fact, they were looking at local authorities and national authorities, and nobody did better than 0.3. So what does that tell us? Simple interpretation is that the correlation between the assessment of a project and the likelihood of the project being implemented, there is no correlation, it's 0. And then if we look at, in the UK, I take it there's guys from TFGM and other places there, to say that we have varying views in the UK is being generous to us. And these 3 clips that I've selected from, actually from the Times newspaper, they're all pretty current, right? They've all come from the last 2 or 3 weeks, right? Along the lines of, what are we going to do? We're going to have to legislate, right? What's the public opinion about scooters? And if you know James May, he's media transport influencer, top gear, to be honest. We've moved on. Yeah, if you know James May, then yeah, he's, I've got one. I've been using it illegally. So just simple examples like that. And what do we know? Right? We know that we can measure, we can analyze, we can do it. Right? The Highways Agency post-opening project assessment results are very good. We send these analysis results into a decision, and something completely different happens. I can quote you a roundabout in Aberdeen that's been assessed now for 20 years and only recently built. So it kind of begs the question, if the assessment and the decision are not correlated, what is going on in the minds of the decision makers? What are they making their decision on, and on what basis? Right. So that's kind of setting the scene for the research that I've been doing separately with Margaret and Dylan, and what I'm looking at on the eHUBS project. If you want to switch over to the next slide, right, it's qualitative data analysis. Right. When you get reports, when you get databases, you get lots of charts, lots of numbers. Right. That's what we as engineers regard as data. Right. The social scientists, other folk, don't necessarily see it that way. They look at words, they look at text, they look at descriptions, right? The sort of the soft descriptive data as opposed to the crunchy hard numeric. I've got just a couple of reports that I'm using in the project I'm currently working on. One's from Department for Transport, commissioned by from Kantar on public acceptance and attitudes to e-scooters, and one is a bit more on the marketing side. It's very descriptive. It's very descriptive of public attitudes. It's very descriptive of what e-scooters are and what they can do. Those two reports between them contain absolutely nothing in the way of charts, tables, what we would know as engineers as data, and yet they contain a lot of information. And so it's that qualitative data that we need to start looking at if we're going to understand the next level of where our analysis results go and what happens to them in the minds of the politicians and decision makers. So if you move on, next one.
You still have about 1.5 minutes left.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
That time. Okay, so my project goals, right? Collate descriptive data. Move on to the next one then, and we'll go through the methodology. Right. Basically describe the topic, find the relative data documents, and I'm using your eHUBS deliverables, transport strategy documents, academic papers, consultants' reports submitted to people like DFT. And you design a coding scheme, and you go and identify within those documents the elements of your topic. And if you move on, analyze them. The statistical analysis isn't strong, as in the full-on mathematical analysis. It's the cross tabulations. It's looking at where the priorities are, looking at the differences between different classes of documents. Right. So, what different attitudes? What's coming out as the things that are actually really important? Looking at the soft factors. Right. Following that research with the qualitative data, we'll have basically a different perception of what people are saying about the rise of micromobility, right, as opposed to what they are measuring. And the next question is, how would you use it to complement the hard factors analysis you've already done, right? So if you want to move on. Right, that's just a very quick view of what I'm doing, sort of documents I'm going, and if we're on time, keep going. Right.
Thank you so much, Pete, for...
hierarchy, can we just get to the last one? Right.
Yes.
This are the sorts of things I've been finding, right? Cargo bikes, you discuss them a lot in eHUBS. Other micromobility studies, not so much. Transport strategy, never heard of them, right? Operator finance, right? The academics don't bother about that. eHUBS planning, you do. Do we know that then the academics aren't really fussed about the money, but the planners are, right? And one thing I've seen is low emission vehicles, scooters. People regard them as toys, right? Children's toys. I've only seen that in one report, but it wasn't really strong, right? So anyway, my plan is methodology report and preliminary report in June, and a findings report, full report and papers will be later in October. So thank you. Sorry that was overrunning.
No, I'm very happy that you were with us via Zoom today to explain a bit about that. Looking forward to the final data in October. Please join us again to explain it all. And how can we follow up if you're not able to join us here? How can we follow up on the research results?
Just get in touch with me. You've got my email address. Share that with everybody who wants it. You've got my phone number as well to organise this. Share that with anybody. Or contact me through Dylan, who will be somewhere in your audience, I suspect.
Yeah, she is around here. I saw her. I haven't seen her. Ah, there she is.
Yeah.
We will. Thank you so much. Big round of applause for Pete Sykes from the Newcastle University.
Thank you. And I've got away without any question?
Yeah, go ahead.
I said I've got away without any questions, have I?
Yeah, you have. So thank you so much. See you next time. Because we have to go to the next part of the program for the closing program, and that is Geert Kloppenburg. Geert Kloppenburg, please join me. Geert Kloppenburg is an author, journalist, but also a podcast maker when it comes to public space and transport. Take a seat. And you travel throughout Europe during COVID to do a deep dive in all these kinds of topics with public space. And sometimes we're in contact, and you're quite annoyed by...
Are you out of breath?
Sorry?
Are you out of breath?
Am I? No. And you're quite annoyed by how cities tend to forget schools or other places where people should meet, and cars still get priority. Let's look at a film you brought along for people to get an idea of what kind of work you do.
Yeah, then for the viewers, for the first time, last time I made a video, it went onto national television, and so you will see a video what's not out on YouTube, so please don't film. And the second thing, I'm curious what you think of the video, of course, but have a look at the time, and it's in the right corner. That's the most important element because it goes quite quickly. So please be sure you look at the time.
So there's a premiere, like the first time you show it ever anywhere.
Yeah. And keep it within this audience.
Well, it is going to be recorded. And the second thing, this time at the bottom right corner, it's still your copyright. Let's have a look.
Ja, jongens, ik ben de dag hier onderzoek gaan doen in Amsterdam. Hier zit ik dan de hele dag te kijken op wat daar gebeurt. Daar gebeurt. En we vragen ons af in Nederland of we het verkeer veiliger kunnen krijgen in Amsterdam. Nou, het is hier schering en inslag de hele dag.
Look at the time. 11:13.
Daar zie je het daarachter al komen. Hier is het slopen. Kijk, hoe? Dat was het weer uit.
Sounds quite hard.
11:18, 3 minutes later.
Ik doe onderzoek naar de verkeersveiligheid. Ja. Gaat goed, hè? Dacht ik al.
11:22, 3 minutes later. Safe, hè? So safe, cycling in Amsterdam.
Niet te geloven. Gaat ook dubbel erlang. Deze auto gaat ook dubbel erlang, bijna raak. Hier zie je het heel goed.
Little child,
Zie dat meisje
11:43.
daar? Auto
auto vast, fietsers vast. What's the worst problem here?
The Dirk and the Albert Heijn delivery trucks, they cannot turn on this corner.
Ja, treffender kan je het bijna niet krijgen. Ja, die denkt ook bij zichzelf, hoe moet dit nou? Ik kan niet meer wandelen.
Wandelen is hier dus ook geen optie meer. Uitzoomend zien we eigenlijk dat het aantal fietsers de afgelopen 15 jaar op de Bilderdijkstraat en rond de Bilderdijkstraat dusdanig is toegenomen dat dit simpelweg op dit tijdstip niet meer past met bestel, vracht of gewone auto. Afgelopen half jaar is op deze plek ook een dodelijk ongeval geweest. Uit deze beelden van circa een half uur kunt u wel zien dat dit geen toeval is. Kortom, het is acuter dan ooit.
Thank you. So the last bit for the people who couldn't read the subtitles, it was you filmed it in the Bilderdijkstraat in West, Amsterdam Oud-West. So it's the western part, just west of the city center, a very busy street with a lot of things going on. And you saw the person trying to pass the van, and it simply wasn't possible. Why did you want to show this?
Take one step back. Like, I work as a strategic advisor for many different municipalities, even just under our national minister. Mm-hmm. And we tend to look at all the reports and all the data. Where are we going to invest money? And then I always come up with a new PowerPoint, and that means I've almost produced 100 films saying the total cost of road safety is 24 billion euros within Holland. Road accidents. We can even write down the numbers, 620,000 heavily injured. And of course, the most vulnerable people, elderly people, and younger children, I can do more even on schools, but you saw that woman that could not even walk anymore. And that how we spend our money within cities and what has priority and what hasn't any priority is so crucial. So I don't make these movies just as fun. It's actually that in the debate in Rotterdam, the whole debate changed. Everybody says, this was not in our data. That elderly woman, she had no economical benefit, was not in the data. So it's crucial. If what I try to do is look at all the reports, I am in all those different meetings with all the policymakers, and then what I do, I also go on the streets and have a look at our world-famous Johan Cruyff. It happens, it's really important what happens at what time. These schools are just around the corner here. Mm-hmm. It's residential area. Eh? You were talking before in the show about the zone of the canals, but this is where the people live in Amsterdam, in Haarlem, in Rotterdam, in Milan, in Naples. This is where the real people live, the kids, elderly people. So that's why I found it important that it's not only films, it's actually showing what is and what is not important within a city.
You've been traveling, especially during COVID.
And it's good fun to make as well.
Of course, yeah. You've been traveling throughout all the cities in Europe. Especially also in Paris twice. We had a very interesting film where you biked together with the deputy mayor of Paris for transport.
Yeah, that was 2 years ago.
Yeah, for the amazing, of course, the famous tunnels on the Seine.
Yeah.
You also been to Paris a while back to make another short film on how they approach school districts or areas surrounding a school.
Yeah, can I just introduce it before? I made a video in Holland. Near the school of my own daughter. I've got 4 little daughters. That's in Haarlem. It's a mid-sized city, and that was how safe it is for children to cycle to school in the morning. I went there for 30 days, every single morning at 7:45 while it was snowing, whatever whatever the weather was. And I did this in Rotterdam and in Hilversum and in Amsterdam. And what I found really important, that certainly the people in Holland sometimes really look into a mirror and have a look at cycling paradise. And then I wanted to show what happened to me when I was visiting Milan, Naples, and this is just the first edit of 90 seconds in Paris. And I hope everybody in Holland has a look what's going on here in Paris.
Well, let's have a look.
Residential area within Paris. Here, in the very heart of Paris, we will have a look at how children go to primary and secondary schools in the morning, on a snowy day on the 1st of April. We zoom into the 10th arrondissement with 90,000 inhabitants, and then further to the Porte Saint-Martin district, which counts 10 schools and 5 daycare centers. This entire road is closed for motorized traffic. Around the schools, entrances are also closed so that cars cannot go in. And there are no parking zones everywhere, and only walking and cycling are allowed, with fencing next to the school to indicate that parking is not allowed. These are the measures taken by the French authorities around the schools, and just look at the effect in this district. Here you can see as well that the turning right past the school is prohibited, which has immediately made the traffic situation around the school much safer. I have honestly never seen anything like this, how well organized this is. We are in the very heart of a residential area of Paris, and people just walk and cycle to school. This is not the canal in Amsterdam, this is Paris. And snowing at the 1st of April, being there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and my hands were, oh. But it was stunning, because my mother studied in Paris, so I've been there 15 years. The transformation they are making is humongous, and this is residential area, so this is not touristic area. And I think sharing these examples is something I really like to do, like getting the best examples from anywhere in the world. And I'm hoping to visit London and to visit many other places.
Perhaps Manchester?
Absolutely, Manchester. I love to go to Manchester. And then, of course, I also want to go to the soccer stadium and do some other things and have a look at the end of the line. Maybe I can emphasize that already. This is like morning in the school. So we're going to do this. And it's going to change. You see so many people change it, because it's not a left or right-wing discussion anymore, because it was already discussed earlier here in the discussion. Says, do the people want it? The funny thing is, I do so much more work after I've published that movie, and I saw they asked the citizens, and like, oh, do you want to give up your car, and blah, blah, blah. And of course, everybody said no. Then the second question was, do you want to pay more for your parking permit? What do you think a Dutch person would say? No. That's very, very, very good. Very, I said, have you asked the parents that if they would think it was a good idea to kill their own children while driving their car? No, seriously, they did not ask that question. It was not in the list. How important is it that your children are able to play in your streets? How important is it to have delivery vans delivering internet goods with 2,600 kilo vans entering the school area at 10 o'clock in the morning? So it was not vague, it was Albert Heijn. That's a delivery what you can enter because it comes before 9 o'clock. So it's really important that a government and a local authority says something. Of course, if you would want it and somebody else not, that means that van is entering the residential area within a city, and everybody's just looking, and we're looking at smart this and smart that. And I'm like, have this Paris thing going, please.
So the thing you say is, if we're talking about redesigning transport to have a public a people-centered public space and have a more sustainable, more livable cities, you need to start with being safe for children.
Start with the most vulnerable people, elderly people, children. They are actually, they can't take part in the city anymore. The independence of a child of 13 to be independent from their parents, to go to school, to go to sport, to go to their grandma, that is so important. And the other option is that the parents have to bring them by car. So it's the actual independence of the child being at stake here within the city. Mm-hmm. So it's crucial. So it's funny that we talk so much about eHUBs and all those kinds of things. And I'm like, let's start off with the basics. Basics means children going to school. Everybody agrees on that. And then we need to have safe roads getting them there. And they need to be able to go to sport as well. Or they need to be able to go to a friend at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And they should not get hit by a delivery van because somebody is pressing the button on an internet really important thing he or she wants to buy. What is important, what is not?
Thank you, Geert. Yeah, of course, a lot to think about. And when you talk about the project we're talking about today, redesigning cities and redesigning traveling in cities, that means less private cars and more focused on people living in the city.
And less delivery vans entering residential areas that people press. We've got this discussion in Amsterdam about gorillas on a bike. The amount of vehicles, delivery vans going into residential areas delivering goods is unbelievable. That's what we should focus on.
Thank you, Geert. Kloppenburg. You had lots of podcasts and other things you can look up. And a very easy, good name, Metropolitan Mobility Podcast.
Thanks.
So, big round of applause for Geert Kloppenburg. We move on to the last panel, and I'll go into the venue itself to get people here. But please come forward. Karen van Kluizen, Gracia Milahachku, and of course Debbie Dekkers and Tracy Rollins. I'm with you. So Karen, if I may, to start with you, what do you experience today? Because you were in the ISO, you were talking about the cities, examples from all the cities throughout Europe who participated, so Nijmegen, Dreux, Kempten, Manchester, Amsterdam, and Leuven. Did you find new experiences?
Yes, it was very insightful to hear very openly from the cities what opportunities as well as challenges they've been facing in piloting the eHUBs. Before I go into that, I fully agree with what Geert just said, by the way. And safety and sustainability go hand in hand, so if we don't get the basics right, then we shouldn't even be talking about all the fancy stuff that comes after. But coming back to the city pilots and what's been discussed, I think there were some interesting insights in terms of the challenges and the obstacles we still see in moving forward and in making sure that we, at some point, go beyond the pilot stage that we're currently in when it comes to the rollout of eHUBs. What was mentioned several times is the need to be flexible when you roll out these eHUBs at certain locations. As we discussed also this morning, there's trial and error involved, and you might find out along the course that maybe you chose the wrong location, that it's not working for this or the other reason, and that you therefore shouldn't be investing in very fancy infrastructural eHUBs, but rather keep it simple so that you can also move them to another location if needed. What is also a big challenge is the business model and getting that right, and also especially when we talk about smaller and medium-sized cities where there's lower density, the critical mass is not necessarily there. So are we going to subsidize these eHUBs and the respective mobility services in the future? That's a decision to make. There's been a tremendous impact of COVID, clearly, and we still see the repercussions of that. The importance of communications and awareness raising, creating a brand for your eHUBs, but also really investing in that behavioral change that we need to induce. high expectations on service levels towards the operators. There's only so many chances you get to make a good impression. And if you fail several times, people will not try again. And clearly, as a conclusion, as with all solutions, eHUBs are definitely not a silver bullet. I mean, just putting those hubs out there is not going to lead to a miraculous radical modal shift. And I think there we need to come back to what we said this morning as well. We need to combine carrots and sticks. And if we do not come to a situation where we internalize the external costs of polluting car traffic to society, people will not seriously consider the alternative. So they need to feel it in their wallet. And they need to bear the consequences of unsustainable behavior.
Thank you. Yeah, I haven't introduced, this morning I introduced you as Secretary General from the Polis Network. Of course, for the people joining us later, that's your role. Tracy Rowlands, you're a council member for the City of Manchester. Debbie Dekkers, you're the lead for the innovation team on smart mobility here in Amsterdam, of the Chief Technology Officer's Office. And Grazia Minaciu, you are the founder of the Urbanized Hub in Romania. So we're all up to speed again. So Karen, to come back to you, I really, and of course I asked Geert to be here today because I really think it's important to start with the beginning again, to designing space, and I think it strengthens the case for redesigning public space in such a way, and also the need for hubs. But if Geert says, well, let's not talk about all these topics, and let's just talk about the really important thing. So how does it connect to your work? Because I can imagine it's quite easy in a European network to get lost in policies and in directives and trying to get people together. How do you do that?
So innovation is in our DNA, but even more so, the governance of innovation is in our DNA. And all these technologies and new solutions come with big promises, but if we do not regulate them well, they will not be delivering on those promises, or they will not be aligning with our public policy goals. That's one thing. Second, innovation is not just technology. The big innovation will happen in terms of the decisions we make as policy and decision makers, and the radical choices we make. And public space is very valuable because it's very scarce, and all these new mobility services are fighting for their share of that public space. But the great news is that public authorities are in charge of that space, and that makes them tremendously powerful. And sometimes they don't even realize how powerful they are. By taking away space or giving space to a certain mode, you decide which ones you prioritize or deprioritize. And that's where I see the future going, the public authority as the orchestrator of public space, and deciding you get more, you get less, because you are sustainable and you are not. And that's what we need to focus on in moving forward. And that's how we need to make use or not of innovation, and really look at which technology serves my purpose, and not use this technology as a means, as an end in itself, but only as a means to an end.
So a neutral approach to traffic doesn't exist?
No.
Thank you. Debbie, you are working in the City of Amsterdam with smart mobility on whole level. You are one of the people connected to the eHUBS project. How did you get started, and how is this important? Why do you think this is important to you?
We started, I think it was 5 years ago. We got a call from Cargaroo. Do you want to participate in our project to learn more about the cluster of shared mobility? And of course, we as Amsterdam, we had some shared mobility services back then, but still it's nothing compared to where we are right now. And for me, my personal interest in the project was, can we combine those modalities and see if the confrontation with a bicycle, digital in your app, but also physically on the street, will change my plan to take a car? And I'm not sure if we found the answer yet, but I hope we can still learn from the project and the years we still have left.
So your team did several research projects, several tryouts, so-called reisproef, travel plan, travel test in that sense. So you've been working on it for many years now, right?
Yes. And for us as Amsterdam, I'm not sure if you've seen all the pilots, but the purpose of an Interreg project is to share different use cases and share different perspectives. We in Amsterdam decided to do a bottom-up approach. We had a very strong vision on participation in our city government. We had a car-free agenda, so to reduce cars. And we had policy on electrifying the fleet. So we thought as an innovation team, innovation is per definition not in silos. This is a project we should participate on. Let's combine all those policies and create this pilots in eHUBS and learn from that. And we figured that it's not only a physical on-street public space problem or question actually, it's also about behavioral change. That's what Serval says about the reisproef. We gave out mobility credits in order for people to try different modes of public and shared mobility and to see what reasons they had to change their mobility behavior. So yeah, all combined in this project and the program we lead.
Grazian, in the previous session on this table, we talked about Urbanized Hub, or a bit about Urbanized Hub. You've brought along some pictures to show people here what you're doing in Romania. So Urbanized Hub is a bottom-up movement, non-governmental, and trying to talk in Romania about redesigning public space. Am I correctly? How old are you, your organization? How old is it?
6 years.
6 years.
And we start to do bottom-up projects in the last 2-3 years. Still, we start to organize events. This is a couple of events with the mayors and municipalities and also with the experts, because when you want to build a community of people who will shape the future cities, you need to have the tools. Events and websites are two of our tools, and we raise an important community in the last 6 years, and since 2-3 years ago we start also to do projects, redesign of public space, projects where we involve citizens in the co-design of a city, from the mobility point of view till the public space. And you will see in the following pictures, this is only one. You have other pictures. Yeah, this is the project line. Is the first high line. We look at the New York project, and we want to design a urban regeneration process. We involve 4,000 people. We have a questionnaire, and 4,000.
Talk a bit further from the microphone.
And 4,000 people were responding to the questionnaire. And we use also a Dutch company. It's called Furban, from Future Urban, and the people could access a platform and design. You will see the models in the right, and design the public space. This is very innovative for not only for Romania, for even for Netherlands, I think. And yeah, you see how we designed the public space together with the community. Let's hope that this project will be until 2024. Bucharest needs this type of vision. And then, yeah, we organize also hackathons. In the last 4 years, we did like 6 or 7 hackathons in the 5 cities of Romania, and we design also an urban mobility lab. We came with 50 solutions for sustainable and smart cities, solution which came from the citizens. So we hope that in the next years we will create an accelerator. So we will have an accelerator of solution for cities designed by the citizens. And yeah, this was a project in a small city, Lugoj, in west part of Romania. And in this project we bring people in order to do the urban planning. So we design a theme of urban planning, a master plan of urban planning, together with the community. And what we did also a solution contest with the students from architecture, biggest cities, and we bought citizens to vote what type of solution they want to see in the future planning of the city. Next picture, please. I don't know if it's, yeah. These are the designing of public spaces. As you can see, as you know, Eastern Europe has a lot of communistic blocks, and there is no quality of public space. So if you want to go in a good public space, you need to take the car which is not good. You need to commute in other part of the city. So what we did, together with the World Bank, because we are working close with the World Bank, we designed a guide for how the public spaces should be shaped in order that people who are living in those communistic blocks to have this type of quality of public space. Unfortunately, there is a struggle to eliminate the parking cars, so you can see the only thing that we can do was to green the public parking spaces. But yeah, it's a beginning, and I hope that the following projects will be eliminating the parking spaces and build spaces for community. I think that was all the pictures. Isn't it?
If you look at Northwestern Europe from a Southeastern European perspective, so what things can we learn from you? What innovative things should we do the same way as you do? Because you talked earlier today, and people can watch it back on video, but you talked about how it's sometimes quite difficult to get government getting along with your plans, especially when they find out it costs money. But what kind of things can we learn from you?
Yeah, I think there are some cities in Romania, and specific, I'm coming right now from Cluj-Napoca, where for example, we work from Friday till Sunday in order to co-create a roadmap of how Cluj could become climate neutral till 2030. Cluj is one of the cities who is part of the 100 mission. I think Amsterdam also. So we did that in a collaborative way. It was amazing to see public administration clusters of energy efficiency, startups staying together at one table and working in the weekends in order to do some specific measures for the next 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years, how Cluj will evolve as a climate neutral city. I mean, there are things which can be learned in both ways. So that's why in the future we will invite you and your organization to be present in Romania to talk about sustainable urban development.
Thank you. If we look at the, first of all, for you, if you have questions or want to contribute, please raise your hand, I'll come to you. But first of all, if we look at designing the future of the cities, we've been talking about many solutions throughout Europe with possibilities and chances. We also looked at dangers if we don't do it correctly, like Geert told us, but other people told earlier today. So what would for you be the main ingredients for the public space of the future, Tracy?
Just give me an easy question. So it always comes back for me to that point of inclusivity. So when we talk about designing spaces for people, who have we got in our mind when we think about people? Do we think about people that are like us, or do we really mean everyone? So I'll just give you a really quick example in Manchester, where we've got sort of flatter, more accessible spaces, teenagers on skateboards. That becomes an issue for some people, a bit like we have the dividing opinion on e-scooters. So we need to think about what I might mean as people. Is that the same for everyone? So how we use language, I think, is really, really important, because we make assumptions about what certain words or phrases mean for people. You know, for only recently as mobility meant all forms of moving around, mobility was very much about disabled people at one time in our culture and the way that we speak. So I think for me, it's being really aware of meaning of phrases changing a lot, and we need to be really clear. I'm really aware of kind of speaking to residents and making sure that I don't make promises that I can't keep. So I'm never working with a blank piece of paper. I can't just say, what would you like? Because I have to think about the funding. I have to think about the existing policies, have to think about those other commitments to climate change, environment, etc. So it's never a clean sheet of paper, which makes it really difficult. But I think we have to be honest about those constraints that we have from the start and build outwards really and find that compromise.
Debbie? What would you say are the main ingredients?
As an innovation officer, I would say innovation, trial and error. I think we already raised the problem with space. It's scarce, so don't just invest in one solution. Just try and improve fail. I would say to all the city officials, please try and fail. We had a big failure at the beginning of our project, but it made, in the end, our eHUBs much better. And look at us now. We have 15 in our city. I'm very proud. So, yeah, don't be afraid. Try.
There's a question from the audience.
Yes, I think Geert showed us very well the problems that we have in cities, and also the example of Paris. I think it's very good, but it's also very in a Paris context. Because in Paris, in France in general, you can just do things without specifically asking anybody's opinion about it and then hope that you get re-elected. It is hard, but they have the ability to do that in Paris and in France. How do you feel about your own countries? I think we have 4 countries at the table, and I'm wondering how culturally it is possible to, for instance, do these very radical things that they did in Paris.
Who would like to respond to that? Is it, well, Gratjan,
yeah,
you are the only person at the table who's not connected to the government, but you try to convince... Or Karen is also not connected to the government. You worked with a lot of government. But how do you convince city governments to participate?
As I said in the earlier panel, I think it's about trust. And I think it's about establishing a relationship with the public administration. What we are doing in Romania, and not only in Romania, also in other cities from Central and Eastern Europe, we try to identify the proactive administration, the administration which wants to be innovative and which is not afraid to fail, and start working with them. Because and also that administration should have the ownership, because it's about responsibility. They know that on the short term, the people will not be content, but on the long term, it's a good decision. So that's why I think the leadership of public administration is very important, and also the fact that we should, I mean, we as an entity to work with that public administration which can have the ownership of the project and try and do innovative projects, not afraid to fail, and also not afraid to do, let's say, project which on the short term can be like people will not be content, but on the long term they will follow a clear vision of sustainability.
Thank you. There's one more question here in the audience. And if other people have questions, please raise your hands. I will come to you.
Hi, I'm Jeroen Bornstein from Cargaroo. We do cargo bike sharing, and we're involved in the initiation of the eHUBS project here in Amsterdam and other cities. My question actually for Debbie. As you know, there are countries abroad which heavily subsidize forms of shared mobility. In Holland, that's not yet the case. And the result may be that shared mobility is mainly available in the inner cities where the affluent and the more rich people live. And the effect may be that in the neighborhoods which are socially deprived, there is less offering of shared mobility and also for cargo bikes. What is your view on that, on the role of the local government in creating an equal offering of shared mobility for all the citizens?
So would you say that you want to know from Debbie how can cities help make sure that shared mobility is available throughout the city and throughout the country, not just where the most people live and the most affluent people live?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Debbie.
I think, speaking from an Amsterdam perspective, the reason we have a shared mobility policy is just regulate space. But if we view shared mobility as like an asset to everyone who needs to travel, we might even rethink the way we design our policies and our permits. So I'm not the one who is making the new policy. He's sitting over there, my colleague Jeroen. But together we are talking about how can we use the policy as an instrument to achieve those kinds of goals. So subsidy is one, but also we've been talking to our Flemish partners. They use a certain point system, that if you provide your shared modality or your hub in a less dense area, you get more points, and in the end, the amount of points will grant you a permit or not. So yeah, really look at why you want shared mobility, for whom, for what purpose, and then design your policy.
Are there other questions from the audience? Then I'll have plenty more. So if we look at today, we talked a lot about different ways of getting people involved in these kind of redesign of public space. We talked about how we can get people, make sure that people are also able to join this move to different forms of public space. What did we lack today? What topics should we discuss about when we want to really design the city of tomorrow? What topic did we forget to tackle? Or did we do anything? Perhaps also a question for the audience. If anyone has an idea, we forgot to talk about this. Because the thing Geert said with the very fundamental issue that you should make sure that the city is safe for the most vulnerable, that is very easy to say yes to. Of course, we agree with that. But how do you really literally do that? How do you make sure that the city is actual safe and the policies are actual safe? Perhaps Tracy, that...
Sure. I think it's about how we redesign our local authority departments to speak to each other much better, much more integrated. So I am responsible by my title for environment and transport, but actually that doesn't mean it's just about me and the offices which I have oversight of. It's got to be about everyone. It's got to be about community safety. It's got to be about making women and girls, for example, feel safe. It's got to be about our education departments so that we're connected to our schools, our hospitals. It's got to be about the department that controls our health budgets and our well-being. How are we connecting all of those together? So what's been really sort of coming to mind for me today is how we broaden this discussion much more widely to make sure that we are much more integrated. And I'm talking about that as a city level, as a regional level, and then national, so that we are all working towards the same goal, regardless of those political differences. This is about our planet, isn't it? It's about changing our cultures, and that has got to be the same regardless of our political influences. And I think also the funding mix and how we pay for a lot of this. I'm certainly not going to get re-elected if I want to put taxes up, but actually also I need to think about, as you were saying, that greater good. So I might only be in office for a very short time, but what steps can I take during that time that are stepping stones to the greater thing? And I can't think about this selfishly for my own career prospects. This is about what's better for my city, for my kids, my grandkids, and what's going to come later. I can only imprint while I'm around, but I hope people will look back and go, she didn't make too many bad decisions. But it is about also owning up to those mistakes, those failures, but you try with the best of intentions. And I think if we keep that at the heart of everything, that's really key.
Thank you. Quick question over there, and we're almost moving... Oh, 2 questions. We're moving almost to the next session, so... Willem.
Yes, well, talking about what we can do to make our city safer, it's not only the job of our government. I like the example in the last session of Leuven very much. Let people talk to each other from different streets, and they come with the solution, and they confront each other what we are doing in our own behavior as a citizen of our city. And I think we not only have to talk about governments to each other, but also people to people, what we are doing to each other. Because we can get rid of the cars, but then the e-bike, which we see in our city, it's not making it safer. So if we don't start behaving differently, then we aren't becoming safe too.
Thank you. And there's a question, Jori from Leuven. Your question?
Yeah, you asked what didn't we really tackle today, and I think there is still some sort of miscommunication between us mobility experts and the people. If I talk to my friends, for them mobility is that the future will be that there is endless travel, that there are no limits, whilst I think today we sort of stared, at least in the last discussion, is like, do we really need all these endless travel behavior. Where do we set the limit? And that also raises the question, even though we talked about it a lot today, what do we want to achieve with the eHUBs? What is, I think we really need to make that more tangible, because yeah, it's a very difficult debate, but what do we want with mobility? I don't have the question myself for Leuven. We're always thinking about, yeah, everybody needs to travel, but who actually needs to travel in the future? Do we really always need to travel? I think that debate is really crucial in everything we discuss here today.
Thank you. Yeah, for the thing that comes to mind now with me is this weekend was the Dutch television program called Tegenlicht. The English word for its backlight was on mobility. And it bugged me, to be quite honest, because it was only talking about how we can redesign what the transport of the future would look like. And it's only about more, and technological solutions. Personally, as you can see today, I'm wearing a sweater with a bike on it, and this morning I had a t-shirt with a train. That's because I'm a complete nerd. I'm always in these kind of topics. So I find it very good to get people to talk about a broader sense of what it means to change public transport and transport in general on all levels. Thank you for this. Please do respond. And I'll go to the other side to...
What I think also we maybe haven't addressed enough so far is the role of shared mobility versus public transport in our cities. Public transport and active travel are the backbone of a sustainable urban mobility ecosystem. And I think it's important to define very clearly what role we want shared mobility to play. We have to recognize that mass transit will never be able to address the needs of everybody, whether we're talking about off-peak periods or specific target groups with specific needs, or whether we're talking about remote areas. And that's really the use cases where shared mobility can step in. And then at the same time, we have to make sure we properly integrate the two, shared mobility and public transport. And I think that requires more discussion and also will further clearly define the role of eHUBs, for example. And another point I think that we should be discussing more is a trend that's coming up really, and that's the concept of the 15-minute city, where services are available to you within 15-minute reaches, ideally by cycling and walking. And this could potentially really change our cities in the future. This inherent link between urban planning and transport planning is instrumental.
Thank you. And as we learned today, 15 minutes preferably for someone who's slower than the average. But thank you. Next question here.
Hi, thank you. So I think so much is also about reframing and language. So I'm actually an urban planner and I specialize in freight. So when I see videos of, trucks and everybody coming together, it's always the trucks are the bad guys. And actually, in many ways, trucks, that's public transit. That's all of our stuff that's in there. That's not, one person's personal item. It's all of ours. And I think being able to reframe that and make sure that we're using language to solve the problem and not think, well, that's the private sector, that's not my issue, that's just something they need to figure out. Instead, it's, oh, I'm an urban planner, or I'm government, and we need to work together with the private sector to figure that out. And one other little thing about language is, as you can tell by my accent, I'm from North America. And one of the things that, probably the only thing that we are ahead of Europe in transportation is we don't use the word accident anymore. We use collision or incident or crash because when we say accident, it implies that no one's doing anything wrong, which often isn't the case. So that's one thing I challenge everyone here is to start changing that language when you're speaking about that, because I hear it a lot and I find it very interesting that that hasn't shifted as much in Europe.
Thank you. The last response, you have to save that for the drinks because we're at the end of the program and I just want to bring forward Esther Veenendaal. And please come forward. And you and Debbie are connected. And Debbie, perhaps you can join us here. You and Debbie are connected with the. You can stand here. You are connected together with with each other on the eHUBS project. You are one of the project leads here in the city of Amsterdam. The city of Amsterdam was the project lead of the whole eHUBS project. How did you look back at it today? Is this like a fitting end of the whole session? You can use that microphone if you want to.
No, I hope not.
Yeah, it should be on.
Should be on now? Okay, great. No, I hope not. Because I've been through a lot of sessions and I've heard a lot of answers, or actually people speaking. We are just at the beginning of this research, so I hope this is not the end. Speaking from Amsterdam, this is definitely not the end. We have 15 hubs. We are in conversation with new neighborhoods to establish more hubs. We have a program called the Hubs Program where we establish much more hubs. And we keep on learning with our knowledge institutions together to see what the future will bring. Also with our private partners to see if and how we can make our city smarter, better and greener.
Thank you. And Esther Veenendaal, you are connected to RVO, Rijksdienst voor Ondernemers. So it's like Ondernemend Nederland. So it's the organization from the national level in the Netherlands who supports entrepreneurship in the Netherlands. And you're the contact point for Interreg Europe.
Yeah, I'm the national contact point for the Interreg Northwest Europe. And every country has its own national contact point.
And if people like Debbie want to continue a certain project, how would that work? How can people contact you, or how can people contact Interreg in different countries?
Yeah, you can just contact me. I have my email.
We'll put it on the site.
Okay, oh, perfect. Yeah. It's really easy to get in contact with me, and I can help you together with my colleagues to apply for an Interreg project if you want, because I think Interreg has a lot of possibilities for you. As like you said, Interreg fosters projects to let countries work together on common challenges, like, for example, the sustainable mobility transition. And you can learn from each other, you can execute pilots, and please come to me and we help you further.
Thank you so much. Well, this was today. Thank you for being here today. This was the first day of the Metropolitan Mobility Conference on building sustainable and livable cities. The closing session for the eHUBS project. And thank you for joining us here in Amsterdam. Tomorrow will be another day. Of course, tomorrow we'll be continuing again here in Pakhuis de Zwijger, but then on the 5th floor in the Ijzaal in the studio. And for example, we're going to talk about getting the business model right, or digging into data, how to organize digital dimensions of eHUBs, and many other topics. And then, I'll promise you, tomorrow Diederik will take you along to the Marineterrein to show you the hub at the Marineterrein already working at this moment. Downstairs you can have a drink, but let's not move out before I would ask you to give a big round of applause for, of course, Karen van Kluisen, Secretary General at Polis Network, Tracy Rawlings, Executive Committee Member of Environment at Manchester City Council, Gracian Milahescu, Founding Member of Urbanized Hub, Pete Sykes, of course, earlier, Visiting Research Fellow at Newcastle University, Geert Kloppenburg, journalist and podcast maker, Esther Veenendaal from the National Key Point for Interreg projects, and Debbie Dekkers, the lead for the Innovation Network for Smart Mobility here in Amsterdam. Thank you so much, and a big round of applause.